Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I want to share with you 10 more of the strangest knives in my collection. You might know me as a knife collector if you're familiar with my channel. If you're not familiar with my channel, hi, I'm a knife collector. A lot of the stuff that I have is practical and useful, and a lot of the stuff that I have is just really, really weird. I come across some of the most interesting stuff considering what I do, which is review knives on YouTube. So I thought I would share 10 more since you enjoyed the last video so much, which I'll link down in the description. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Starting off here with number 10. This isn't too weird, I guess, but I gotta be honest, this is just baffling to me. The Gerber double down folding butterfly machete is such a weird freaking knife. This thing makes no sense. I'm sure your first question is, dude, you're a knife guy, like, do the butterfly knife stuff with it. Like, why are you opening it like you are, you know, a potato person? And the answer is, it's twofold. Number one, I don't know how to do butterfly knife stuff. I'm always impressed by people who do those tricks, right? But number two, even if I wanted to, this thing doesn't necessarily allow you to do that. The thing kind of gets stuck right here. These little like folding tab things. Once you approach this spot right here, click, so you can't. This would inevitably result in me severing a limb, and I do not want to do that. I think the other question that people have about this knife, one of the most common questions is it like usable? And the answer is yes. So I'm trying to get it locked in place. This is, of the stuff I'm going to show you today, believe it or not, this is one of the more usable ones. The locking system is actually pretty substantial, and this knife has already seen a fair amount of use. But it is awkward. Take it from me, the owner of this thing. It is far more convenient to simply use a machete or anything else. I mean, honestly, like hacking down a tree with a rolling pin might be a little more convenient than using the double down, but it does work. So yeah, it'll be linked down in the description with anything else from this list that I'm actually able to link. Moving on here, here's one that is nowhere near the same thing. This is the Katsu Kingfisher, part of their limited Kingfisher edition. Now, this absolutely 100% looks like something that you would find in the display at the weird gas station that you find on Interstate that has like all the crystal stuff. You know, there's always like a dragon and a wizard holding a crystal, you know, all that crap. Yeah, it absolutely looks like it would be in that type of display. The difference between this and that stuff is that this is legitimately made with like luxury materials. This is an authentic copper Damascus, meaning it is quite literally a Damascus made with layers of copper. We've got polishing on there, crazy polishing. I think somewhere in here we can see, if I can get up close to it, we can actually see the layers in there. Yeah, there we go. Can we see? Sorry, I still have my daughter painted my fingernails there. But for, you know, people who are, you know, skeptical about what this actually is, you can see the layers of the copper in there, and then the core. This has sort of a sanmai core to it as well. Now, you know, that being said, does that mean that this is going to be performance oriented? No, look at this thing. I mean, whose hand was this made for? It's wild. Actual pearl inlays and actual titanium Damascus for the frame. That is legitimately layers of folded titanium turned into a Damascus, which is why they refer to it as titanium Damascus. Anyways, this is a hyper expensive object. I mean, not quite as expensive as the multi-$1,000 custom knives that we're going to look at later in this video, but it is definitely an expensive object. It also has a weird locking mechanism that I completely missed when I unboxed this. The way that the spine, this sort of spring-loaded spine thing, engages with this I don't know. It looks like Poseidon's pocket knife, right? The way that this engages back here is actually kind of neat. It's pretty satisfying the way that that all comes together. It doesn't have a pocket clip. I'm not sure of too many people who would really want to carry this, but I do find this to be a really interesting and bizarre object. It's just not the type of folding knife that you come across every single day. Moving on here, we've got a knife that I think many of my subscribers will be familiar with, but have forgotten about. This is a special edition version of the Jans EMW. For those wondering, yeah, those are both Damasteel blades. And if you're unfamiliar with Damasteel, no, I'm not mispronouncing Damascus. Damasteel is a proprietary powder performance-oriented form of Damascus made by the Damasteel Company, PMC 27 and RWL 34. So the end result is they've got lots of different patterns, but very, very beautiful and 100% functional, actually very performance oriented. So this is an interesting double frame lock. If I didn't mention, the weird thing about this knife is that it is a double frame lock front flipper. Not many of those exist. It also has zirconium Damascus inlays. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's titanium Damascus with zirconium layered into it. So this is a special edition version of the knife that was offered and actually might still be offered by Crane's Cutlery. I know you can still get the Jans EMW there, but this is kind of like the wild and crazy version of the already wild and crazy knife. This is obviously a knife that's not going to be for everybody. It's very thick versus your average folding knife, and the only way to deploy the blades is with a front flipper, which some people don't like. The benefit of this is that you have a tanto blade for tanto tasks, some people get really upset when I say tanto incorrectly. So for those folks out there, tanto, you dorks. You have a tanto blade for tanto tasks, and you have a drop point blade for the other 99.99999% of tasks that can be accomplished with whatever, right? But it is weird. It's weird and fun, and I get this thing out every now and then. I just kind of, the little kid in me is like, yeah, even though there's no, you need to like cut two boxes at the same time that are specifically spaced apart. But yeah, it is a fun knife, and it's made incredibly well. The blue part of the frame is solid titanium. This is actually built by Riat. So if you're familiar with Riat, then you're familiar. All right, let's shift gears and show something absolutely ridiculous. I feel like a lot of my subscribers and people in iFold in general are going to be familiar with this, but many of you are not. This is the hot dog knife, or the Wiener Warrior, the Boker Kalashnikov Wiener Warrior. Oh my gosh, how do we even explain this? Like, the joke has just gotten so out of hand with this. The Boker Kalashnikov is actually a really great budget side opening automatic knife that I highly recommend for people who want a cool OTS or out the side. I know it's not often referred as that, but an out the side automatic knife, and you don't want to spend a ton of money. Check out the Boker Kalashnikov. I mean, it's got its quirks, but it's a great knife. At some point, the knife world decided, like the enthusiast knife world decided, that we wanted our knives to have food themes. And we did like a donut sprinkle thing, which was really, really popular for a while. It's kind of run its course. On April Fool's Day back, I don't know how long ago, but Blade HQ did a thing where they jokingly were like, haha, we have a whole like food line there was like a pizza one and a hot dog one and an ice cream one, right? And it was a joke, but people thought that it was really funny. And Blade HQ decided, well, if we were going to make one of these, which one should we do? Well, obviously, the Wiener Warrior had to be the number one. I love this knife. Every time I show this knife, it creates massive confusion because it's obviously a joke. The funniest part is that the end of it is rounded and it actually has a sharp blade. This knife will cut. And it's just a really funny thing to carry periodically, especially if I'm like at a barbecue and like somebody needs a pocket knife. Just the last thing that anybody is ever going to expect you to pull out of your pocket is a switchblade that looks like a hot dog with mustard on it, right? I mean, they even made the handle the same color and texture as a hot dog bun. This knife will live forever. When the world has ended and human beings have long since, existed, the civilizations of the future, or alien civilizations that discover this planet, will dig up our remains And somebody will find this, some entity will find this and just be absolutely baffled. Oh boy, that's really funny to me. Okay, moving on here to something absolutely insane. This is actually a knife that I talk about a lot, but I have to bring it up here because it was not in the last episode, and this is the Maxace Titanus. This is, if you are not familiar with Maxace, this is definitely the side of Maxace that loves to do things that are absolutely stupid and ridiculous just for the sake of being stupid and ridiculous. The entire frame, this hulking frame, is made from multiple individual pieces of titanium that have been anodized. The blade, for some reason, is M390, nearly a 1/4-inch slab of M390. Look how big these freaking stop pins are. Like, the external stops on this are so ridiculous. For some reason, they chose proprietary hardware. This has a secondary locking pin that can be inserted here. I don't have it out, but you can put it there, and it keeps the, like, if for some reason the frame lock or the nested liner lock, whatever you want to call this, if it fails, you have this hulking secondary pin. Maxace is a company that actually is, in terms of, like, production precision work, they're some of the best on earth. They make super practical and beautiful knives. But somebody at Maxace is a psychopath. Somebody every now and then is like, what if we made something really weird? Like, they just do that all the time, and it's really fun. You never know what Maxace is going to come out with. They are so one side or the other, and I'm all for it. I love these ridiculous. This looks like, I think this is the one that people call the Power Ranger knife, and it's 100% accurate. It's so funny to me that this is made with like 1/1000th tolerances. It is incredibly well made. I mean, it's a beautiful precision object and so completely useless. The pocket clip, that had to be a joke. I mean, look how small the pocket clip is. They put way too many screws on it. The Titanus is, it's a knife that represents my favorite part of the knife world, and that's the completely and totally self-aware OEMs and designers who could care less about making things that are practical all the time. They just love to make essentially meme knives that are really expensive, but appeal to a very specific part of the knife world. We have something kind of in that category and kind of not next. This is the new Reich Alien 4, which again looks like something that you would find in the weird Crystal Wizard display at the late night gas station on Interstate, right? But this, much like the Maxace, is actually a super precision and like very luxurious item. The entire shell is 2 pieces of titanium. Now, this looks like cast titanium. Every time somebody sees this, they say, oh, he's going to talk about how amazing the milling is, but it's obviously cast. It is not cast. This is milled titanium, guys. It is legitimate. This is really, really spectacular. Richard Wu, who is the designer behind this, I think you can actually see right there, Richard Wu. It does look like something from the Alien movies or something from, it almost looks like prehistoric, right? Something weird and unsettling that we would find in the ground. This is an absolutely wild knife. And yeah, that is actually a powdered Damascus as well. They have it listed as Damasteel, but they are labeling it with the actual proprietary Damasteel company's name. It's not actually made by Damasteel. But there's a little bit of confusion on this, and I haven't really dug into exactly what this is. The best description I got was from somebody at Reich explaining that their process of forging it is incredibly similar, if not identical, to Damasteel, but it's not actually made by Damasteel. So, as far as I know, this is a performance-oriented Damascus that is legitimately layered. I think we can actually see on the spine, if we look here very, very closely. Let's see if I can hold that really still there. If you can see, oh boy, it's hard to see, but you can absolutely see the little layers in there. They just don't have, I mean, this is what we refer to as a near zero etch, or like a high polish. So the 2 different compositions, normally with Damascus, Damasteel, right, you have a less stainless composition in there so that when they etch it, you can see the contrast. This has got a high polish all the way around, so it's kind of hard to see all the layers, but the end result is very, very beautiful. This is a bizarre titanium frame lock, not just because of the casing, but the fact that the piece holding the blade is actually separate from both the blade and the pivot housing and the frame. So we have a titanium frame lock with a steel lock bar insert that is interacting with a steel insert inside of the blade housing so that you have steel on steel contact. And then the blade housing is titanium, which is holding onto a Damasteel blade. It's so weird. I mean, the intricacies of this knife go far beyond the aesthetic. And I love this thing. I think it's absolutely wild. And it actually does work as a pocket knife. I mean, it absolutely will. Obviously, you're not going to want to go batoning anything with this, but it's a really cool knife. And, you know, as somebody who's got over 4,000 uploads on YouTube, I have handled a lot of stuff, far more than the average person. And I can tell you, this is not something that I see every day. In fact, everything on this list is not something that I see every single day. All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, let's talk about this one. This is just a weird looking knife. I mean, everything from Midgard's Messer is weird. If you guys like weird overbuilt knives, that's what you want to look at. In fact, I'll just link Midgard's Messer through Tools for Gents down in the description because there's tons of people out there who love stuff like this and don't even realize it yet. But the Sleipner is actually on the smaller side, or Sleipner, whatever you want to call that. It's on the smaller side for Midgard's Messer knives. They have a much larger fixed blade version of this, and everybody, you know, wants it here. This is what you guys want to see me do, right? I mean, as soon as I pulled this knife out, you couldn't listen to anything that I said. Your brain said, put your finger in that, put your finger in that hole, put your finger in that hole. All right, well, there it is. It's in there. Does that help with ergonomics? No, this is horrifically uncomfortable. The fixed blade version of this, which is custom and actually made in Germany by Midgard's Messer, it's got a much bigger hole. So it's much easier to hang on to, and I suppose there's maybe some sort of additional benefit in terms of ergonomics. This one just kind of matches it, and depending on the size of your index finger, you may have a more or less comfortable experience. It also fits, weirdly enough, on a belt buckle, which is also made by Midgard's Messer. So if you want to, and you have the knife and the belt, you can actually wear this knife as an attachment on your belt buckle. That's so weird. Why? Okay, the knife itself outside of that is huge and clunky and just such a strange shape for a knife, but it does work, and it is also very, very robust. I mean, it just operates on a standard titanium frame lock, but the tension on this particular frame lock is very heavy. It's not a comfortable knife. It is fun, though, and is definitely a conversation piece. All right, moving on here. This next one is the most expensive knife that I own. It is also one of 4 in existence. I know my subs are going, oh, he's getting out the knife. Yeah, we got to talk about this one. This is a custom, a USA-made, very, very rare version of an already difficult knife model to get. This is the Sharp by Design Brian Nadeau Arch Nemesis. This particular one, I can promise you, is one of the most rare versions of this knife that you will ever see. Bold statement, Metal Complex. Let's hear what he's got to say. This is one of 4 brothers that exist in this specific variation. This variation would be a fully milled dagger ground hollow blade. Those are, that pattern is milled into this blade. So the story goes, and by the way, I'm sure you're wondering, some people, is that a zirconium frame lock? And the answer is, yes, it is. A contoured and textured zirconium frame lock with zirconium Damascus inlays. Beautiful. So this is custom. An enormous amount of work went into this knife. The Sharp by Design Arch Nemesis itself is considered the crown jewel for a lot of collectors. Now, obviously, knives get substantially more expensive. But if you want to know how expensive this knife is, I'm going to respond to that by saying you do not want to know how expensive this knife is. It will only make you upset. I never plan to sell it, so it doesn't matter anyway. Don't look this knife up on eBay. Much, much, much less rare versions of this knife go for thousands on eBay. So If you don't want to be upset about that, don't do it. I'm a collector. I'm going to keep this thing forever because of the history, but only 4 exist with these beautiful milled blades, and each one of them has a different frame and inlay. Some of them don't have inlays. I don't know where the brothers are, but I do know after talking with the owner of this and Brian Nadeau himself that this was the 4th and final version. Originally, there were only going to be 3 because after the 3rd one, Brian Nadeau got so pissed off at how many bits he was going through trying to mill the blades that he said, I'm never going to do this again. One more person, who I have no idea who they are, apparently convinced him to do it one more time. And this was the one more time. This was the final one very, very long ago. So after that, he said no more. So you can still get the Arch Nemesis in a bunch of different forms, and there will still be super crazy custom versions of it if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to buy one. But he will never do these blades again, making this a very interesting part of knife world history. I've always enjoyed his work above anybody else. I think that his design language, his ability to execute is just absolutely superior to anything that I've handled. And so having this piece of history is just really cool. And, you know, it is weird. It's a flipper dagger, which is not something you see very often, but certainly less common would be the zirconium frame lock element, and especially the milled blade. That is just something that you pretty much never see. So anyways, yeah, a really cool knife and definitely a strange one. Moving on here, this is just a fun one. This is always a crowd favorite. This is actually my 3rd, but I gave the other 2 away, and this one I wanted to keep. This is my 3rd Reich Cicada. The way that you deploy this knife is by depressing this little button right here and allowing the blade to swing freely into the open position, revealing not a true dagger, which is why the line doesn't go perfectly down the center. We have a false edge here, and then what it's doing is it's accommodating, it looks like it's on accident, but it's accommodating for a sharpened bevel, which you can see it runs right into. This is a polished integral titanium frame that has been milled, yes, milled, not cast, milled to mimic the shell and wings of a cicada. Something about this knife is so charming and beautiful. It is not practical at all. In fact, it's a little bit tricky to manipulate properly, but it is very weird. And also, it has this really strange draw to it. Every time I see this laying on a surface in my office, I pick it up and stare at it for like 15 minutes before I realize what's even happening. I don't know why. That is just what happens. They have a version of this that is gold and blue. This will be linked down in the description. It is not cheap. Doing a single piece of titanium, that with the frame being integral, it means that the entire frame was milled from a single block of titanium. The blade is also M390. So even though this is a small object, it is still a very expensive object. Yeah, it's just a fun little piece. And every time I show it on social media, people go nuts for it. There's a sort of a dark gray with gold accents. Once there's a gold one with blue eyes. There's this silver one with blue eyes, which I personally find the most appealing. But the polishing on the titanium is beautiful. Reich, again, you know, their ability to execute this type of stuff is just really, really spectacular. So it's one that I very much enjoy, and other people seem to enjoy it as well. Not incredibly functional or useful, but a fun object. So if you are a knife collector, this is a really, really cool one. If you enjoy the, you know, basically the interesting and weird elements, but at the same time you want stuff like this to be made really, really well, even if it's not super functional, the Reich Cicada is really cool. And then finally, the last one is, well, we're going to have to zoom the camera out. So for the last knife here, I'm actually going to bring back the Titanus as a point of reference so that you guys understand exactly how huge this next knife is. I think we should probably measure the Titanus in the open position so that you really get an idea. The Titanus is an 11¼ inch knife. Folding knife, I might add, right? This is the Midgard's Messer Fenris, and it is not open yet. This is the largest folding knife that I own. The one that's been making the rounds on social media is the Odin's Toothpick, which I'll tell you I also have here. That knife is smaller than the Fenris. The Fenris is a massive aluminum-framed folding knife that also has a huge secondary pin, which it absolutely needs. This knife is horrifically dangerous, just in terms of how much blade I literally don't have room to showcase it all the way open. Can I get it diagonal? There we go. I can just about. So this does have a little, I say little, it's actually a gigantic steel liner lock. But this is an early version of that. You can barely see it right here, but it says prototype. This was a prototype CPM D2 Fenris. Getting that in there to make sure it stays locked out. And it is essentially a folding sword. Is this functional? I don't think this knife would be very good at anything. I don't think it would be good as a sword. I don't think it would be good as a machete or any type of tool. And I don't know. It might scare somebody off if they're trying to attack you, but I'm not sure that I would want to use this as any type of combat catalyst, right? It is weird, though. I mean, it is truly gigantic. Definitely the largest folding knife that I have here. Not the largest folding knife in the world, but the largest folding knife that I own. The overall length of this guy is 25 inches and an eighth. So, yeah, huge. The blade length on this alone, the CPM D2 blade, is 11 and a quarter. So the blade is actually the same length as the Titanus opened up. That's crazy because this is a huge knife. Why do I own this? Well, for the same reason that I own all of the other weird knives. I'm just fascinated with weird stuff. I have absolutely no use for this. And again, I don't think it's actually very durable. It's just Midgard's Messer being weird. I mean, they do this type of thing all the time. They just really went above and beyond with the Fenris. You can actually buy this. I don't recommend it because it is very, very expensive and probably not safe. The force that blade comes down with is absurd. I'm going to show you here. If you let go of this blade that is running on bearings for some reason, yeah, that's a lot of weight coming down. And the blade is definitely sharp. In fact, I can probably demonstrate that here with a note card. Do I have one? Yeah. The blade is definitely sharp enough to slice and all of that. It's not the most incredible cutting geometry ever, but it is definitely sharp. So, a crazy knife, not something that I get out during parties for obvious reasons. These episodes are always really fun to do, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, the original version of this will be linked in the description if you guys want to check it out. Some of the knives shown in this video will be available, and if so, I have them linked in the description. If not, they're just not available. Like the Arch Nemesis obviously is not going to be available. So anyways, hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.